Well, never mind all that stuff, because COVID also taught Sunny Hostin how to get her groceries delivered. Yeah, I know, amazing. But that means it's time for...
Living your life and you're feeling low. You don't know what is true. You don't know what's true. So you quick flip through the channels to watch Sunny on The View. Oh my God, the stuff she says is dumb. Where the hell they get this woman from? She's a host who's always crass and lame, with lots of nonsense to proclaim.
Sunny Hostin just had a major meltdown on live TV. And no, you can't blame Mercury in retrograde this time. Greg Gutfeld called her out so sharply it looked like even her teleprompter couldn't handle it, glitching like an old arcade game. On the fritz, the hypocrisy was laid bare for everyone to see, and the drama off the charts. It was a full-on spectacle, tissues flying, tempers flaring, and reactions exploding faster than sneakers vanishing in a Black Friday frenzy. Viewers were left stunned, watching the chaos unfold in real time. It was cable news theater at its wildest.
But that's only because they keep talking. Those hens are always clucking. They get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, and then I get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, except on purpose. But every now and then, one of those dingbats inadvertently says something that reveals modern liberal thought so perfectly it deserves further study. You know, like a weird serpent that washed up on the beach and you want to poke it with a stick.
This clash was the smackdown no one wanted to admit was coming. But let's be honest, anyone who's ever watched The View could have seen it coming a mile away. Tensions have been simmering for months, and the lid finally blew off in spectacular fashion. Greg Gutfeld didn't just throw shade, he launched a full-scale takedown, and Sunny Hostin was right in the blast zone. What followed was pure daytime TV mayhem. Sunny didn't just crack under pressure, she shattered. And we're not talking the usual flustered response when someone on The View gets asked anything deeper than, "What's your favorite vacation spot?" No, this was an epic 4K Ultra HD, slow motion implosion, raw, real, and impossible to look away from. And here's the kicker. What Sunny blurted out after the cameras stopped rolling, absolutely jaw-dropping. Staffers were left speechless, some even walking off set. It was one of those, did that just happen? Moments that'll live in TV infamy. In the middle of it all stood Greg Gutfeld, the unexpected MVP of the chaos, grinning like a cat who just knocked the fishbowl off. The table, love him or hate him, he shook the table, and the ratings are proof people couldn't stop watching.
So, Sunny, I bet you haven't been in a supermarket since COVID for about 3 years.
I haven't been in a supermarket since COVID. For about 3 years. That's when I discovered Instacart, and I give them a big tip because they don't always pay their people well, and it's so that's been an issue I think for the company. But man, you can get toiletries, you can get fire logs. You know those big Bounty towels you don't want to carry.
Those from Costco.
Somebody else goes.
Fire logs? She had to tell the audience that she tips big because even she knows she sounds insufferable. Hey, I'm an but at least I tip.
In just 2 minutes, Greg Gutfeld torched more hypocrisy than The View has been sweeping under the rug for the past 2 decades. It was messy, wild, and absolutely unforgettable. The chaos kicked off like any other unhinged Tuesday on The View, with that signature group therapy vibe, loud affirmations, constant self-congratulation, and the usual delusion that they're saving democracy one misinformed hot take at a time. But Gutfeld didn't play along. He called out the contradictions, poked holes in the echo chamber, and left the panel scrambling. It was a moment of live TV carnage that viewers won't soon forget.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out She's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. Here's how she took.
Sunny Hostin, who approaches her role as a legal expert with all the finesse of a kid mashing buttons on Guitar Hero. All energy, no accuracy, was front and center, dishing out her trademark insights. Her message was loud and clear. Nothing is ever her fault. Facts are flexible, and if you shout your opinion hard enough, it magically becomes the truth. Watching The View is like diving headfirst into the most chaotic political comment section you've ever seen. Only it's televised and hosted by people who once skimmed a Wikipedia page about the Constitution and now consider themselves constitutional scholars. Sunny fits right in like a perfectly chaotic puzzle piece. She's hailed as the voice of reason, but only if your definition of reason involves declaring everything a threat to democracy just because someone disagrees with her almond milk. Latte Worldview. The segment spiraled from the usual echo chamber antics into full-blown meltdown territory, with Sunny leading the charge. Her blend of self-righteous indignation and selective legal memory turned the discussion into a masterclass in deflection. In short, it was vintage View, loud, messy, and painfully off base, with Sunny at the eye of the storm, sipping her moral superiority like it's organic tea.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, you know, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah. So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. And I think it's great for our children. To know this information. I guess it's a fact of life that this is how some people made their living, on the backs of others.
Fact of life. Interesting change of tune. For more, we go to our chief Sunny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
But then karma came swinging like a wrecking ball, and its name was Greg Gutfeld. Greg isn't your typical buttoned-up TV host. He's more like that unfiltered guy at the dinner table who says what everyone else is too polite or too afraid to admit out loud. And Sunny Hostin, she wasn't ready for it. The moment Greg started rattling off her greatest hits of hypocrisy, Sunny folded faster than a dollar store deck chair in a hurricane. It was chaotic brilliance. The tension hit a fever pitch as he exposed the glaring contradiction between Sunny's constant calls for civil discourse and her recent tirade branding half the country as democracy-destroying villains. For someone who claims to champion respectful conversation, Sunny seems to believe that only applies if you're nodding along to her every word. Disagree? Congrats, you're suddenly a national threat, an accomplice to societal collapse, and probably unfit to order coffee. Her logic? It's like watching a courtroom breakdown mashed with middle school cafeteria theatrics. One minute she's citing constitutional law, the next she's flinging accusations like food in a lunchroom brawl. Wrapped in a power suit and righteous fury, Sunny delivered TV gold, but Greg served the final blow.
Oh, I'm gonna milk this till the end of time. You're right. Anytime she says something stupid, I'm gonna go, slave owner! Kat, I just watched that. That's the second time I've watched that. She was tipped off beforehand, right? Because they had to tell her before, so she had time to regroup. They wouldn't just surprise. Really? You think? No?
I don't know. I feel like she could have maybe done better. Okay, here's the thing.
But Greg wasn't even close to finished. He went full detective mode on Sunny Hostin, pulling receipts like he was conducting a forensic audit of her entire public record. It was brutal. One moment, Sunny's tearing up over family separations. At the border, the next she's defending her favorite political allies for doing the exact same thing, with a wave of the hand and a lecture about complex policy nuances that regular folks just wouldn't understand. Hypocrisy? She could embroider it on a throw pillow and sell it as merch. Greg aired it all out like dirty laundry on a windy day, each inconsistency flapping in plain sight. Sunny's outrage flips like a light switch, blazing bright when a conservative so much as sneezes, completely off when a liberal body slams the Constitution on national television. Her moral compass seems to work only when it points toward her own ideology. She's the type to demand federal investigations over a poorly worded tweet, while staunchly defending politicians who couldn't spell ethics, even if you spotted them the E and the T. The whole exchange turned into a political circus, and Greg, he didn't just stir the pot, he kicked it off the stove and watched the chaos boil over.
I think that women, white women in particular, want to protect the patriarchy here because it's to their benefit. Yeah. They want to make sure that their husbands do well. They want to make sure that their sons do well. They want to make sure that their children do well. And they want to make sure that they do well. Most of the women in some of these studies are married white women, and they do fall in line with what their husbands are doing.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions? Yeah. Like you said, it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up.
Here's the best part. The audience at The View reacted exactly how you'd expect, like the loyal hype squad they are. Greg Gutfeld could have walked on set with a full scrapbook of Sunny Hostin's contradictions, signed and notarized by Sunny herself, and they still would have booed him like he'd just insulted their grandmothers. Facts? Irrelevant. If it challenges their favorite co-host, it's automatically labeled as hate. No surprise there. Naturally, Sunny reached for the oldest trick in the televised debate playbook. She flipped the script and played the victim with award-worthy precision. Within seconds, her voice was trembling, the tears were flowing, and it was clear this wasn't her first time in a media training seminar. She took Gutfeld's very direct fact-based takedown and turned it into an all-out attack on women, minorities, and probably rescue puppies while she was at it. Because when you can't win the argument on logic, you stretch the battlefield until it's knee-deep in emotion. This is the same Sunny Hostin who has spent years comfortably tossing out sweeping insults at millions of Americans from her high-backed ABC throne. She's been quick to generalize, quick to judge, and lightning fast when it comes to labeling dissent as danger. But the moment someone holds her to the same standard, suddenly it's a war on decency, a personal attack, and a threat to civil society. Gutfeld didn't fall for it. He stood his ground, calmly letting the truth speak for itself, while the studio swirled into emotional overdrive. It was a masterclass in handling deflection and a brutal reminder that when the spotlight hits back, some folks just aren't ready for the glare.
Joy Behar gets racism after all. She's been black on Halloween. Yeah. But Joy wasn't there on the show. Apparently Mondays are her days off when she feeds in the pasture. But that is convenient, right? It's like one of my aunts dies every time Brian Kilmeade wants to hang out. Maybe Joy needs a full day to read her hate mail, and that's just from the rest of the cast. So Scott had to deal with Sunny Hostin and her typical self-righteous.
The moment someone dared to hold Sunny Hostin accountable for contradicting herself more times than a motivational speaker with commitment issues, boom, the waterworks started. It was emotional gymnastics at its finest. If Olympic judges scored based on a lack of self-awareness and dramatic flair, she would have taken home the gold. And the rest of the View crew? They circled the wagons faster than cowboys in an old western. Only this time, they weren't fending off outlaws. They were diving in front of Sunny to protect her from the unthinkable, being fact-checked. That's all it took to trigger a full-blown on-air meltdown. Whoopi Goldberg even stepped in with a pep talk that essentially boiled down to, facts are just a social construct. If you feel it, it's real. You truly can't make this stuff up. It was like watching a live-action parody of cable news, only they were completely serious. Instead of addressing the actual contradictions, the panel chose to wrap Sunny in. A protective emotional bubble, painting criticism as cruelty and truth as an attack. Meanwhile, the audience clapped along, blissfully unaware they were cheering for a masterclass in deflection. Reality didn't stand a chance.
But unlike this chick, we didn't think it was the best thing that could have happened to us. Although it did get Joy Behar to wear a mask. Okay, you make me sick. It's funny, her being named Joy is like me being named Ugly.
Turns out, when you spend years preaching about civility while simultaneously roasting half the country like it's a backyard BBQ, people start to notice when the mask finally slips. Audiences have memories longer than a TikTok trend, and they definitely remembered every contradictory moment Sunny Hostin served up on live TV. Meanwhile, Greg Gutfeld's segment blew up online, his sharp, sarcastic takedown of Sunny's meltdown striking a chord with everyone fed up with being gaslit by the same tired cable news talking points, recycled week after week like old bathwater nobody wants to touch. His breakdown wasn't just funny, it was a masterclass in exposing The View for what it really is. Not a genuine discussion, but a live-action Tumblr thread with better lighting and a clapping studio audience. Forget real debate. The View is basically synchronized swimming. Everyone knows the choreography in advance. And if you even think about cannonballing into the pool with a different opinion, you get booed like you just set the whole place on fire. It's all about rehearsed reactions and protecting the status quo. The icing on the cake was watching The View scramble behind the scenes, desperately trying to rewrite the narrative after the disaster unfolded live. Producers scrambled to control the damage, but the internet had already spoken. In the end, Gutfeld's segment wasn't just a moment, it was a wake-up call, shining a spotlight on the hypocrisy, the performative outrage, and the echo chamber that The View has become. And viewers, they weren't just watching, they were judging, remembering, and sharing every second.
Did you watch the whole thing or just the parts that I sent you?
I watched it. Obviously, just the parts that you said. Did I watch a whole episode of The View?
No woman can do that unless you're stupid. But
I have a job.
Here's the thing. How can they call themselves progressives when they keep saying that nothing has progressed? Then it's on them.
Right. I just wish I could have, what I would have watched if I could, would have been Joy Behar watching that.
Yes.
And being like, I totally made the right call. It was not an accident that they had him there on her day off.
Yes.
When she was, presented herself as the, expert on systemic racism.
Suddenly, the focus shifted. It wasn't about Sunny Hostin's hypocrisy anymore. Nope. It magically became about protecting women from public attacks and standing up to bullying. Apparently, calling out contradictions is now basically a federal hate crime. Who knew, in reality, The View isn't the place for real conversations. It's a cozy, safe space for ideas that would shatter under even 10 seconds of adult-level debate. Sunny and her co-hosts aren't there to argue. They're running a daily self-esteem seminar disguised as political commentary. The moment someone brings receipts, the whole crew falls apart like wet tissue paper. Logic, consistency, or heaven forbid, a little sarcasm. That's like throwing a grenade into The View's bubble. Sunny's meltdown wasn't some random accident, it was inevitable. She's been building her tower of hypocrisy brick by shaky brick with every contradictory hot take. Greg Gutfeld, he just did the unthinkable. He sneezed and the whole thing came crashing down. Of course, no modern public meltdown is complete without a shiny rebranding campaign. Sunny wrapped up with a tearful sermon about growth and being brave enough to be vulnerable. Translation: please forget I got caught playing Calvin ball with my own principles on live TV.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions?
Yeah.
Like you said, and it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. But the problem with her is that she went full racist. She injected skin color into a fairly generic behavior seen in all spouses. Regardless of skin color, people marry, they listen to each other, they have something in common with them, they share their political views. She just didn't want to upset her husband by saying her husband makes her do everything, and then she'd have to accuse him of being a racist. Because if he told her that this is what white women do, then he's a racist. More time to talk. And I thought Will Smith wouldn't let a black man finish. If her IQ was half as high as her smugness, she'd be Einstein. And later it got weird after Whoopi Goldberg asked a question and Sunny chimed in again.
Honestly, it was almost impressive watching The View spin a full-blown exposure of lies and double standards into a sweet little teachable moment about healing. They could have sold it as the plot of a new Marvel movie, The Gaslight Avengers. Meanwhile, Greg Gutfeld just kept racking up wins. No yelling, no meltdown, just that smug smirk that drives the professionally offended absolutely crazy. He knows exactly how the game works. The moment you point out that the Emperor is running around buck naked, they accuse you of attacking body positivity. And poor Sunny, she's trapped in a loop with no exit in sight. Now, every time Sunny tries to climb back up on her moral high horse, someone's right there to remind her about that tiny little incident, the one where she melted down faster than butter in a microwave. Confront her with her own words today, and boom, she's basically a living meme. She's become the forever example of what happens when emotional manipulation finally crashes into a wall called accountability. In a perfect world, The View would take a hard look in the mirror after all this. Maybe, just maybe, they'd think about inviting guests with genuinely different perspectives. Perhaps they'd encourage real debates again, like adults who can actually talk without reaching for a fainting couch every time someone disagrees. But let's be real, the odds of The View embracing intellectual honesty are about as high as Sunny Hostin winning a Pulitzer Prize for political courage. Instead, you already know what's coming. Get ready for episodes packed with emotional support llamas, guided breathing exercises, and a heartfelt 3-part series called Why Feelings Are More Important Than Facts. Sunny? Oh, she'll keep claiming the high ground, still confusing. Altitude with morality. She'll toss out long-winded speeches about how truth matters, all while dodging anything that even smells like actual truth, like it's radioactive waste. Meanwhile, Greg Gutfeld will just keep doing what he does best: cool, calm, and savage. He's reminding America that not only is the Emperor naked, but he's out here demanding a standing ovation for his invisible wardrobe. If nothing else, Sunny's Meltdown gave us a real gift, a front row seat to a televised reminder that hypocrisy always eats itself alive. You can only fake it for so long, telling yourself and your audience fairy tales, before someone somewhere points, laughs, and the whole thing crumbles. And man, did we laugh. Sunny Hostin's televised breakdown wasn't just about getting exposed. It wasn't even about politics anymore. It was about what happens when fragile egos, fake outrage, and cold, brutal reality finally crash headfirst into each other. The View spun their usual wheel of outrage, but this time it landed right on humiliation, and the whole world was there to watch it unfold in HD. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next wild breakdown we cover. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll catch you in the next one.